There's no witty intro. It's just some badass suspension, ripping through the ruts, full articulation, on a track. LOSI Hammer Rey, U4, ready to run. Is this the best thing you can buy right now? Let's talk about it. I miss racing. I used to race all the time. Then I don't. And now I like scale stuff, but I still want to race. So I'm confused why U4 RC isn't bigger, because it combines this drop dead sexy chassis with racing if you want to in mixed conditions. Let's get right into the chassis. And one of my biggest pet peeves is you're looking at the chassis, how it sits with the body on, and it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to take the body off the roll cage and all the panels to actually see the chassis. And I'm a bit lazy, and I couldn't find my 2mm wrench. So here we are. You're going to look at the top of the car, and I'm going to talk about the chassis. It's scaled, I want to say perfectly. I think it couldn't look any better than this. You got scale accessories, you got body panels, you got two drivers that aren't doofy scale. They're not creepy looking like some other things. You get a full tire on the back. You get the 5-link suspension, independent front, which means it's better for actual driving, not like two solid front axles where it's a little tricky to drive. Everybody that says it's not is lying. It's difficult. The good news is it's easier to drive. It's too fast for how big it is, and it's really a lot of fun. And I'm going to test this in 2 spots. The first one is going to be simply on a track, and the second one I'm just going to go on an open field. Talk about it. Here's the front suspension, and let's talk about this. I had to look back because we did the Baja Rey, and the front suspension was slightly different. Only in the arms look different. These are solid, one piece with fixed links everywhere, which I'm pro and for against fixed links. They're easy. You don't have to worry about them. They can bend a little bit, but you don't have to mess with setting them. But then you can't change the settings, and probably could use a little bit more camber just to make it more stable in an off-road track environment. The other thing what's cool is that you get faux disc brakes. They don't really work, but hey, they look sweet. Metal hexes, plastic CVDs. And then I'm going to talk about this because it happened relatively quickly in my testing. The outer hinge pin is connected with 2 separate little grub screws, which with a slight tap to a wall pulled out and basically bent the arm a little bit and pulled the section out. It was easily fixed by unscrewing it and threading it back in, but it seems like a hinge pin all the way through would just have been smarter. I don't understand. But hey, I'm not an engineer. I'm just the guy with a microphone. I don't think that an open running, like in a field, if you really had any issues like hitting a rock, it would pull out, but it did fix relatively quickly and didn't break. The rear suspension has these big trailing links, 2 shock design, actually 1 shock with a extra damper. This real sway bar is in the front. There's a faux sway bar, and it's faux show, not for real. But I thought it was, but it's just for looks. It's a major feature of the truck, which is strange that it's not real, but I guess they just wanted to mimic the real stuff, which just looks awesome. Here's a better shot of that faux rear sway bar, which is real on the full-scale stuff, but here it's not. It does say that in the text, but it's kind of hidden that it has a faux sway bar. It doesn't tell you which one. But I did notice, and it did happen relatively quickly when I was running it, that the rear bottom link popped off, and it seemed to affect the car a little bit. I mean, there is some resistance to it, but I think maybe it was more mental that something popped off, and I felt like the rear end was doing something weird. I realized it wasn't functional when the ball cup was like snapped on with like you breathe, you put a little breath on it, and it snapped back on. My suggestion, if you're going to run this hard or race with it, that you just disconnect it because it's going to look weird just flopping around like dead grasshopper legs in the back. One of the main cool or not cool features of this chassis is that a lot of the things are kind of buried inside. The battery has a rear entry only, a little trap door in the back, which is cool if it's a 3S, but I mean, you're probably limited to some pack size and length. The button just to turn it on is pretty easily accessible, and the electronics are underneath. So any issues with the electronics, it's sort of a pain to get to. Not that you're really going to have any, but it kind of makes it a little frustrating if from a work-on standpoint or maintenance that if to take this apart is going to require a lot of screws. It could be easier, and I guess it could be harder. But overall, if you look at this thing, it just looks sick. You got LED lighting on the top over the windshield. The front lights work. I mean, the drivers look scale, and like I said, not doofy or creepy. overall, it's just a beautiful looking car that I think should be raced more. There should be a series in any track that uses these as racing. And let's get to the track, because that's where I wanted to test it, because I really want to race this on the track. And a track will always give you the strengths and weaknesses of any chassis, no matter what. So the first thing I noticed from driving this is that there's a huge amount of steering. Like this, the throw is like a drift car angle, and it's too much. Probably should turn it down. The other thing is that on 3S, this track isn't really set up for this car. It's not made for big airing jumps like a 10-scale buggy or anything like that. You can't get it to fly level. You just have to remember to keep some throttle on, because once you let go, it's nose diving and you can't pull it out. But the overall handling was a little assy. Not a big deal, because there's kind of low traction at Joe's track and needs to be wet. And the lower the traction, the little harder it was. There's active vehicle control. And this is my biggest like and dislike of this vehicle. It seemed overly active no matter what I did. When it was turned up too much, it was trying to correct the wheels, even just going straight. Very strange. Turn it down too much, and it did weird things. It didn't seem... I want to say it felt like it glitched, if anybody knew what an old glitch felt like, where you kind of got that wiggle in the wheels that wasn't supposed to be there. It was a very fine-tuning thing with the knob, and it just didn't seem natural. With it off, it was a little hard to drive, and you had to put it on a little bit. I'm sure if I drove it more and put packs and packs and packs through this, I would say the handling was fine. But I didn't have that many packs through it. I did like 3 or 4 packs on the track, and I took it to the off-road. But I like to focus on the track handling, only because I want to see this grow as a class, because the scale of this is perfect, and the handling is decent enough. The high center of gravity does screw with that active vehicle control enough. I think that's the issue, that it's so moving that it's reacting and kind of like overreacting. It does have torque steer to the left. As you can see in a lot of videos, it's pulling left a lot. It's not terrible where it's spinning out, but you definitely still feel the torque steer of the system. Through the ruts, it is glorious. I could sit there and go through that little rut section, and I actually would like to build it up to have that just suspension just hammering through there, and fluid and just perfect. It's soft, but that's what you want for desert running. It's not the best setup for a track, and neither is the high center of gravity, but it works. And I think for me, like as a spec class, this would be really cool. The sensorless system does pose some problems, as any sensorless does, in an actual track hitting the same point and having break points that are consistent, which makes it hard to jump sometimes. But it's actually pretty sensitive on the low end. It's not bad at all. Overall, I think I'm just trying to push this as racing, but you could bash the crap out of this. And the open fields, I mean, it's just so pretty to look at going through rough stuff. I think that's what most of the people are going to do, is just kind of bomb through stuff, and that's okay. I think it's a good basher. It's the front arm issue of it being a little too soft and pulling out, and maybe you can drill through and put a real hinge pin through it, kind of lock that out. If you do, great. If you don't, don't. So what are my final thoughts on the Hammer Rey Currie Edition U4 RC RTR by LOSI Team Horizon, that big long stuff that we always say? It's not perfect, but I like it a lot. The looks, the handling, pretty decent. Active vehicle control, I'm not really into it. But for $579, throw in a battery and a charger, probably like $750. You got a pretty capable car. Even for bashing, awesome. On the track, come on guys, let's get this together. It's been too long to have this awesome looking scale stuff and have more fun. Just bring it back. LOSI RC Cars magazine, in whatever issue this is going to be. If you watch a video, check out the magazine. Follow the links, subscribe, buy an issue, do something, like, thumb up, all that fun stuff. Catch you next time. It's been a while between reviews. If you just started watching, it's just a click away from another one.